Oh, you're judging me. Only God can judge me, right? We've all heard that before. People, accusing you of being a judgmental person, and of course, only God can judge them, right? The truth is, we live in a world that's a bit PC or politically correct, where this idea to use judgment on people is like a bad thing or has this negative connotation, or people are afraid of looking bad if they use judgment. The truth is, there's different types of judgment. And the judgment I'm going to speak about today, in fact, it's not only critical, it's essential. You have to have this type of judgment if you're going to have healthy boundaries with people. Most of us here watching this video have probably had somebody throw that one out at them. Oh, you're judging me, right? Or you're being judgy, right? A lot of times this is done to evoke the emotional response of guilt, because emotions are similar to anxiety, but they're a bit more specialized in the message. So emotions have specific messages. If somebody gaslights you into trying to get you to feel guilty by accusing you of judging them, what's the implication of guilt? The implication is that you've done something wrong. And if you believe you've done something wrong, that can have an influence on your behavior, such as, for example, saying no to somebody, setting a healthy boundary, etc. And you get it. So let's get into this judgment issue, because I'm going to say something that's not necessarily PC, right? But here goes. It's okay to judge people. I judge people all the time. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'll give some examples, just a few scenarios. Oh, James, you're judging me. I'll say, yeah, that's correct. You're in fact right. I am judging you. And based on my judgment, I don't feel comfortable whenever you want to meet out somewhere, and you're always half an hour, maybe an hour late. I don't feel you value or respect my time, right? And based on my judgment, I don't think this relationship is going to continue unless some changes are made in your behaviors, right? Or what about just some other common things, right? Maybe somebody has some toxic habits or unhealthy behaviors or toxic type behavior habits, right? It might be somebody who has the right to do what they want to do, such as, for example, maybe they're smoking cigarettes, but maybe it's in a public place. The city ordinance says you have to be 10 feet from the front place of a business in order to smoke, and it has to be in the appropriate designated place. So maybe I don't like to smoke. I don't want secondhand smoke in my lungs. So somebody is standing too close, within reason, or too close, and they're blowing that secondhand smoke in the direction of myself and maybe some children, right? So I pointed out, excuse me, sir, could you please, stand a little further or move? And the person, oh, you're judging me or being judgmental. That's right. You're correct. I am judging you. Based on my judgment, I don't feel comfortable with secondhand smoke being blown in our direction. It's not cool, right? So being able to call things out is totally appropriate. Now, people will throw this "you're judging me" at you as a defensiveness to not have to take any responsibility for their behavior. They feel attacked, maybe feeling judged. You get the idea. But most people that are reasonable, sensible people, are okay with people pointing things out. Somebody with manners who can be considerate probably is typically not going to have an issue of a reasonable request. There's a lot of examples using judgment where you might need to point things out to individuals. You get the idea. How many people watching this video have been on a job interview, right? I've been on a bunch of job interviews in my life. I'm 52 years old, and sometimes you might be in a panel interview with more than one individual. There could be several people, 3 or 4 people staring right at you and taking turns asking you questions. Well, guess what they're doing? They 100% are freaking judging you. You bet your ass they're judging you. They're also using discriminatory factors, discrimination. And the reason they're using their judgment and discrimination with you is to make sure you're going to be the most appropriate or best fit in order for them to decide to begin a relationship with you, with this potential employer-employee relationship. And likewise, even when you work somewhere, there's always an evaluation of how you're doing within this relationship to determine if they're going to continue to allow you to have access with this relationship, being an employee. Sometimes people get fired, right? Hey, this is no longer working out. So how much more important in your personal life, your maybe friends, romantic partners, family even, right? You're not allowed to use this type of judgment, discriminatory factors, in order to make good decisions with relationships, to have healthy boundaries. And typically, I see using good judgment. It can be variable person to person, and that's okay. And the reason is the type of judgment I use is going to be a function of my values. What's important to me? And what's important to me as a function of my values is what I prioritize. And I don't compromise my values. That's what you do when you have healthy boundaries. You can be supportive of people, but you only do it in a way without compromising your values. So for example, I place a lot of value on exercise, physical fitness, right? I keep this 52-year-old body in shape. It's important to me. I want to be healthy. And so I make it a priority. So because of this is something that's non-negotiable. So it's a discriminatory factor if I have someone soliciting me for a relationship to hang out with me. If this individual's the relationship with me is going to infringe upon this value of mine or undermine it, yeah, this is not going to work. I'm going to point that out and say, hey, these are the rules and limits of this relationship. If you want to have one with me, you can't try to interfere with me going to exercise, for instance. You can't try to interfere or be a distraction with me eating healthy. This is what I place value on. It's important to me, right? So this is a discriminatory factor, non-negotiable, and it's also a function of judgment. So people, yeah, they can be weeded out because of that. I just use the exercise as an example. Maybe you're somebody who's in recovery. You're recovering from an alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder, cocaine, pick a drug. And so you have made a decision to live your life a particular way that makes it easier for you to live a life of sobriety, which is going to require boundaries, by the way, right? So based on that, you're going to use discrimination and judgment to decide which people can now be a part of your life, because you got to change people, places, and things sometimes. So this situation, using good judgment, and yes, discriminating is necessary, because if you're not willing to do this, good luck with being able to have healthy boundaries. Boundaries essentially are the rules and limits you set within relationships for yourself in order to be able to feel comfortable to be in that relationship. And by default, the type of boundaries you have, whether they're very porous, rigid, or hopefully healthy, right? That's going to determine who can have access to you and who stays in your life, right? So we do need to use good judgment. It's okay to judge people, and I judge people throughout my life in this sense, and I also use discriminating factors based as a function of what my values are, and that's going to be different for different people. I think you get the idea. Sometimes we do need to hold people accountable if they don't respect our boundaries. It's necessary. And some people say, oh, I never give an ultimatum, right? As you know, that's technically not a bad thing. What is an ultimatum? Typically, an ultimatum for a lot of people is that they've reached a threshold with how much bullshit, right, they're willing to put up with anymore. So I would hope people have a threshold eventually somewhere where they do have you can call it a boundary enforcement is my preference. Hey, this is it. This is what needs to happen. My rules and limits. The ball's in your court. If you can respect it, that's great. But if you can't, this is not going to work. If you want to call it an ultimatum, call it what you want. But there's nothing wrong with that either. So you get the idea. I could go on all day with this topic. It's okay to judge people.